Hello, my name is Shelby, and welcome to this Yoga for Beginners foundational class. I'm very excited to be bringing you this 4 week journey to kind of get introduced to the practice of yoga to the point where we might feel comfortable going into a group class, maybe where we live locally. So I know there's this kind of culture around yoga challenges on the internet, and that language doesn't necessarily resonate with me, so perhaps we can think of this as a yoga invitation or a yoga journey rather than a challenge, because maybe we'll be able to find a little bit of ease. So we're going to start today with our easy seated pose or Sukhasana, which is how I'm seated right now, as well as our cat-cows and our downward facing dog. So if sitting on the floor is not super easy to you, that's okay. That's normal. So maybe we think of this pose rather than calling it easy pose, a pose in which we aim to find ease. So I've got a blanket with me, and I recommend if you're someone who has trouble sitting in this way on the ground to grab a blanket or a pillow, and then you can go ahead and elevate your hips onto the blanket. You might be able to find a little more ease in this easy seat or Sukhasana. Outer edges of the feet are connected to the earth. The sits bones are rooting down, so you feel that grounding sensation through the tailbone. And it's just a pose that we bring a little more intention and awareness into than any other regular seat. So trying to find some length in the spine, feeling the crown of the head floating up to the sky. And again, the tailbone grounding down into the earth. This is a great place to start a practice, to drop into the breath, drop into the body, and kind of separate from the day. So if you feel all right, maybe you kind of feel what it feels like to just take a few slow, deep breaths here. You might close the eyes. Inhaling fully and deeply. Exhaling completely. We'll just do 2 more breaths to really feel into the experience of the shape. Really nice. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is having our hands on the earth. And not only that, but having our weight going into our hands. So that's not something we do a lot in life, but we do in yoga. We put the weight in our hands a lot in yoga. So we call this Hasta Bandha, hand to earth. We want to spread the fingers wide and really press into the whole hand. So I'm in tabletop position right now. My shoulders are over my wrists. My hips are over my knees. The hardest part really is to press into that inner part of the hand between the index finger and thumb. Sometimes that part wants to lift. Really try to press into the whole hand and almost feel like your hand could push through the mat. So you're bringing a little bit of strength. You're not collapsing down into the shoulders. We're really feeling nice and strong here. And this is a great position to start to warm into the spine. So I'm going to teach you cat-cow now. You may or may not have heard of it. So cow is where we arch our back. We call this an anterior tilt of the pelvis, meaning the pelvis is tilting forwards. So that's our cow pose. Oftentimes I encourage you to tuck your toes in cow. And then cat pose, we round the spine, and I'll often encourage you to untuck your toes. So in this pose, your tail is tucked. This is a posterior tilt, meaning the tailbone is tucking underneath you. Not only that, but your chin is curled in. So we're fully rounding the spine all the way from the forehead to the tailbone, pushing into the hands. We like to inhale when we come into cow and exhale when we come into cat. So you might play with a few rounds with your breath. Inhaling, open up, arch the back, curl the toes. Exhale, round the back, untuck the toes. Going at your own pace now, and really noticing how these movements feel in your spine. So if this is your first time with cat-cow, I know sometimes we can feel a little bit timid with moving our bum in this way, if you will. But really focus on your spine. And especially if you're doing this at home, no one's watching. So how good can you make this feel in your spine? Really nice. Okay, my friends, it is time to try out our downward facing dog. I'm going to give us a little bit of a warm up into it with heart melting pose. So in this pose, we're melting our hearts. You'll walk the hands forward out from your tabletop. If you have tighter shoulders and chest, then walk your hands wider. Melt your heart down, melt your forehead down. Now, if this is just not doable, grab that blanket again, and you might put that under the chest or under the forehead to give you a little support. Ultimately, you want to feel the line of your arms opening, the shoulders, the chest, the lats. And you feel how the spine is long here, the arms are long here. This is the same kind of sensation we'll be looking for in down dog. Our tailbone is also tilting up, that anterior tilt that we talked about. So it's not tucking under, it's lifting up. And then from this heart melting pose, you can start to lift your elbows, tuck your toes. I'm going to walk my hand back a little bit, and then lifting the knees. And we find our downward facing dog. So it's an upside down V shape. And start to move. I want you to just move right away. Don't worry about holding it static. Sometimes when we come into it that way, it can turn us off a little bit to yoga, to down dog. So move. Feel into it. It's okay if your heels do not come to the earth. Typically the pose looks like this if you do want to peek for a moment. But if you're up here with the heels, if you're bending the knees, it's totally fine. I'd rather you be with heels lifted and knees bent and having the chest come back towards the thighs than to try to get your legs straight and your heels down and that kind of pushing you forward into this like plank pose with poor alignment. All right. So if you even have, a mirror, or if you want to film yourself, you can kind of check your alignment that way. But finding some movement is always a nice way to feel into the pose. All right, you guys, there you have it. Week 1, we went over easy seated pose, cat and cow with our anterior and posterior pelvic tilts, and downward facing dog. Those 4 poses are going to be a great foundation to get you set up for what is to come next. And I can't wait to see you back here next week where we're going to work on some more foundational yoga for beginners. Thank you so much for joining me. Namaste.